subject, and I call it the Downing Street dilemma. It was easier to alliterate Downing Street than Sussex Drive or Pennsylvania Avenue. But the idea here, of course, 10 Downing Street is where the British Prime Minister lives, so, and it's actually gated. I mean, you can't really get into Downing Street unless you're somebody important now. But, of course, we can assume there are closed-circuit television cameras up and down the length of the street recording everything that happens there, I'm sure since 9/11, I'm sure even since the 1970s, but let's keep it simple and say we're just planning a trip 3 years into the past to December 12th, 2005, not a very ambitious journey, but we've chosen as our destination Downing Street. I mean, I guess the wormhole may be over there somewhere, but when you come out of it, you're going to go to Downing Street and walk along. Well, I think right away this leads to some very serious trouble. And we can look at it from two different directions. I guess the first thing you want to do is, I suppose, before you undertake the journey, is you go to the MI5 library videotape archive and say, excuse me, I would like to look at your videotapes from December 12th, 2005, because I'm planning to travel through time to that date, and I want to check to see if I have done that. So, you look at the videotape, and no matter what it shows, I don't think there's a happy ending to this. Because if it shows that you, in fact, did not walk along Downing Street on December 12th, 2005, I guess that prohibits you from now getting into your time machine and undertaking that journey. You will have to trip on a lot of banana peels so that you fail in taking this stroll. But the other side of the coin is really not any happier. The other side of the coin is that the videotape shows that, well, I did it. By golly, in 2005, someone appeared, sort of out of nowhere, but I mean not really out of nowhere, just off camera from a wormhole, found his way to Downing Street on the Whitehall bus, just like the other tourists, and when he got to Whitehall, took a stroll along. Sorry, not Whitehall, Downing Street. Took a stroll along Downing Street. But in that case, I mean, the videotape shows your every move, so now I guess not only you can do the journey, but you must. And your every muscle twitch and leg movement and arm movement must precisely duplicate what was on the videotape. I guess your free will has been greatly compromised. But then, as the philosophers would say, maybe that's not the right way to look at it. I mean, we are talking about past events, and you can think, well, to be here in this auditorium today, this long string of coincidences must have happened. You know, your father must have met your mother, and these, you know, all these things that must have happened over the last number of decades to get you sitting here tonight. But they are in the past. It's a bit, perhaps, misleading to call them coincidences now that they've happened. And people who look at this number 2 solution to the time travel problem might just see it the same way. I mean, is it really a coincidence if it's already happened? Well, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. There's so many issues here. But we're not, anyway, we're not quite done because there's still the third way out of it, which is the whole parallel universes, parallel timelines sort of way out. And it's not totally crazy. There is support from that from quantum theory, the so-called many worlds interpretation of quantum theory goes back to the 1950s. It suggests that whenever, you know, the whole sort of cat in the box thing, I mean, is the cat alive or is the cat dead? I know I'm glossing over this, but you know, the idea is that every time a quantum event can go one way or the other way, it actually goes both ways. The universe kind of splits up, and you have a universe in which the thing happened this way, and you have a universe in which the thing happened the other way. And string theory, which is the recent spin-off of it known as M theory, as I mentioned earlier, gives us hints that there could be extra universes out there. And also inflationary cosmology. I showed that picture from Andre Linde a little bit earlier. So these different directions from modern physics hint, maybe, that there could be these other universes out there. And so, so what does that mean? So I guess what it means is, yes, you're welcome to go back to the time when Grandpa was a young man, and I suppose you can kill him. And if you kill him, you're going to find yourself living in this parallel world where Grandpa doesn't live to a ripe old age. But you're okay. I mean, the fact that you weren't born, well, it's over here. You know, you continue to exist in this new timeline, I guess. You know, I was thinking about other ways out of it that I'd heard from other writers, and I've been thinking about. One of them is that okay, you meet this old man who's living at the address. I mean, it's obviously the guy because you know he matches the early photos in your photo album. You kill him, and then you find out later that, well, you know, your grandmother had an affair or whatever, so this guy wasn't your biological ancestor. And the first time you hear that, you think, oh, yeah, right. But of course, that actually is no help whatsoever. Because the point is that the photo albums show that that guy that you killed lived to be a ripe old age. So you can't create, I mean, if there's only one universe, you're not allowed to alter it in such a way that this guy, biological ancestor or not, lives to a ripe old age. At any rate, that about wraps it up for time travel. And don't worry, we'll have some time for questions at the end, so you can grill me on some of this. But there is one more last fun topic to get through, which is, could the flow of time be an illusion? I started off this talk by talking about how fundamental time seems, and I guess the thing about time that in particular strikes us as being something very, very basic and primitive is this idea that it's somehow passing. I keep knocking over stuff, but that time is somehow sort of flowing or passing by. I don't know. We say time flows like a river. This is the most common metaphor that we've all heard from poets and various thinkers. Time flows by like a river. Well, does it? I don't know. I mentioned earlier, nothing in physics, either from Newton or in Einstein, really corresponds to this flow. There's nothing that really takes future events and turns them into the present, or takes the present and turns it into the past. And you know, if we say a river flows, well, all right, you can go down to the river with a bucket and sort of measure its flow. You can say that the river is flowing at a certain number of gallons per second or liters per second. Well, you know, because flow is normally a rate of movement of one thing relative to another thing. If time is flowing, what is time flowing with respect to it? At what rate is time flowing? It seems crazy. You can say, well, okay, well, time is flowing by at a rate of 1 second per second. There's the answer. That's not really very helpful. First of all, mathematically, the seconds cancel, and you're really just saying time flows at the rate of 1. But regardless, what would it have been flowing with respect to? I mean, other kinds of flows are a rate of change with respect to time. So if it's time itself that's allegedly flowing, I guess you'd have to postulate the existence of some kind of hyper time, and then you'd be wondering, you know, does it flow? And if it did, there would have to be hyper time and so on. So that doesn't seem to be very helpful. And for that matter, I don't know how much we can say about the direction of time's flow. Because you can say, well, I know that. It flows from the past towards the future, or if you like, the other way around. Future events are moving towards the present. Well, yeah, maybe. But the thing is, I think that's also how we define past and future. So I don't think that's really an answer to the question of what direction does time flow in. So once these are very everyday things, is this idea that time flows, but when we start to analyze them, they start to get a little wonky. And all kinds of physicists and scholars and philosophers and thinkers have pondered this stuff. One of them, another very interesting fellow that I chatted with when I was researching In Search of Time, is Julian Barber. He lives just outside of Oxford in an old farmhouse. And his idea is that there are many nows, lots of nows, but they're not connected. I mean, you connect them, but there's no flow. There's nothing that sort of takes, you know, that connects all the nows together. There's just a static array. He calls it Plutonia because Plato had, you know, this idea of the ideal forms and this kind of thing. And I mean, it's a bit of an extreme view, but as we'll see, it's actually not so far off the mainstream, perhaps. When I talked to him, he said, time is a mistake the mind has made. I would say of time what Laplace said to Napoleon about God, I have no need of that hypothesis. It sounds more profound when an English country gentleman says it in that sort of deep accent. Now, although he denies the existence of time, he was still able to meet me at the train station at the appointed hour. Well, actually, he was a few minutes late, but not as late as you would imagine it from someone who didn't think that time existed at all. So it was very hard to wrap my head around that. Now, he has his own book. You can read it. It's called The End of Time. But it might make your head explode.